To quote Richard Nixon, your long national nightmare is over. We are back. A happy new year to everyone. Thank you for joining. We appreciate your forbearance while we took a little bit of a break. Both the folks you see on camera and the folks behind the scenes who make the show actually a reality. We're very grateful to you for being part of the two-way community. We have a lot in store for 2025, and we're glad to have you as part of what Dan likes to call the flagship program, the morning meeting. Gentlemen, welcome back. Happy New Year. Sean, everyone's been asking me the big reveal. What is your New Year's resolution?
To crush the morning meeting every day with skill and excellence, promise, and love.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Dan, how about you?
Be more patient with our kids. Maybe that applies to this show too.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Thank you. As I said, we're so grateful to have you part of the two-way community. For those who are here for the first time, this is season 4, episode 1. Welcome in. We switch seasons somewhat randomly, but we decided with the new year to flip the switch and make this season 4. As always, whether you're watching on YouTube, thank you for watching there, or X, or here on the two-way platform, we insist on peace, love, and understanding, the presumption of grace for all. This is a unique platform. We're not here for fighting. If we do disagree, we do it with the kind of smile that only Dan can have on his face. And we ask you, if you participate, whether it's here on the two-way platform by raising your hand to ask a question or make a comment, or you're in the chat, please adhere to the ethos which this platform is based on. The smack in the chat went down at the end of the year, according to the algorithm. Not sure exactly how sustainable that will be, but thank you. Lots to cover. Today is an historic day, January 6th. We'll talk about that. I'll, as we always do, run through the day book. This program is based on the Network News Division's morning meetings, where they get on the line with their folks from around the world and they talk about what's going on and then kick it around. The three of us will kick it around a bit, and then we'll open it up to your questions and comments. Again, if you want to be in the queue, please raise your electronic hand and we will call on you shortly. The incumbent president of the United States meets with Venezuelan opposition leader Edmundo Gonzalez today, and then he and the First Lady head to New Orleans, where they participate in a 7 p.m. Eastern Time interfaith service for the families and loved ones of those who died in the tragic New Year's Day attack. Then the president and the First Lady head on to Santa Monica, California. The vice president, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, presides over what will be an hour-plus ceremony. No objections are expected for the first time in a long time, as Donald Trump's election is formally certified by the vice president, with members of Congress present. Don't know exactly yet how many Democrats will be no-shows. We'll look for that. Donald Trump, no public events known today, although he is currently on the Hugh Hewitt program talking up a storm, and we'll try to update you on that in real time. He's already made some semi-news on both the Dreamers and on the question of one lump or two on the reconciliation process. Don't know what the vice president's doing. Don't even know if he's in Washington. Sean, is the vice president-elect, is he in Washington today? Do you know?
I did not look down the street last night, so I don't know.
All right. We don't know where he is. Tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, President Trump is expected to hold a Mar-a-Lago press conference. Now, sometimes his press conferences don't include questions, but I suspect that this one will. So that's something to look forward to. And of course, it's a big week. President Carter will be laying in state in the Capitol. Joe Biden's big exit interview with Susan Page of USA Today, which was conducted yesterday, will be released on Wednesday. I hope they're not sitting on any breaking news by holding that for several days. And of course, lots going on Capitol Hill, more courtesy calls for Trump nominees. There's a big Susie Wiles interview in Axios that I linked to in the newsletter. If you don't get the newsletter through Substack, you should sign up for it. So let's talk about today. The vice president, who will be certifying the results, and we've seen Al Gore did this as well. Other incumbent vice presidents who lost the election have done this. She'll be up there. And she made a video that was released early this morning to kind of commemorate and explain how she sees today. 101, please.
Today at the United States Capitol, I will perform my constitutional duty as Vice President of the United States to certify the results of the 2024 election. This duty is a sacred obligation, one I will uphold guided by love of country, loyalty to our Constitution, and my unwavering faith in the American people. As we have seen, our democracy can be fragile, and it is up to then each one of us to stand up for our most cherished principles.
All right, let's talk about today and January 6th, and then we'll go back to the Trump Hugh Hewitt interview because we're getting a little bit more editorially and some sound what's going on there. Dan, what are you looking for today? What are you expecting today?
It should be smooth and uneventful today. I think, Joe Biden said it yesterday, Harris today. I think the Democratic Party will remind people about what happened 4 years ago, which I think is appropriate. But I think it should be a relatively smooth and uneventful day. And it's also a snow day in DC. So it should be a little less chaotic than it might normally be with the weather.
Sean.
Yeah, to Dan's point, DC doesn't deal well with snow or the discussion of snow or the word snow. And so it's come to a standstill. And I think what's going to be interesting to me, I think we'll go through the process today, but it's how many members aren't going to be there. They were told there was a Republican conference meeting over the weekend at Fort McNair, a strategy session where they talked about the budget reconciliation bill and the strategy for the spring, the first 100 days. And it was amazing how many members didn't show up, didn't spend the weekend there. And obviously now I don't know how they get back. So when you have a narrow vote like this, it could be a really interesting discussion as far as the whip count goes. How many Republicans are there? Because they don't want to put something on the floor and get embarrassed. I don't think people could vote against it per se, but they could hold their vote and just make this embarrassing for the Republicans.
Yeah. Sean, is President Trump going to do a mass pardon of January 6th felons or not? And if he does, is there a big political downside to that?
So I think that every indication that I have gotten, and no one has been, I mean, you haven't heard any attempt to dissuade this narrative. So I think on day one, you're going to see, my guess is a mass pardon. There has been no signal from anyone down there that that's not going to happen. And the expectation is that it will. So I would be shocked if there is not.
And would you think that there'll be political damage to the administration from it? Or does Hunter Biden give Donald Trump a get out of jail free card, so to speak?
I think it gives him, it helps him. And I think there'll be such a flurry of things going on day one that, you'll get the MSNBC chatter, but I'm not sure that it's going to rise to it'll be one of 5, 6 stories that happens, because you'll have some stuff on mass deportations and some other priorities that will be very newsy. So my guess is that their hope is bury this with 5 or 6 other things and hope that, you get the left-leaning chatter and that's it.
Are you saying it will net help him under those circumstances, or you didn't say that?
No, I didn't say that. I don't think it net, but I think that they've raised the bar to a point where if you don't do this, the folks on the right would be, taken back that it didn't happen. So I think that they've done everything to set the bar, to set the expectation that this is going to happen. And so if you're not going to do it, you'll disappoint a very big group of the MAGA folks.
Dan, I have no doubt
I think the other thing that's interesting, Mark, if I can, is just, what's interesting is that there's been a lot of discussion over the last 2-3 weeks about this is not causing the outrage on the right, right? You don't see people on the right sitting out there saying, oh my God, this is a horrible thing that he's doing. They've really normalized what's about to happen. Now, that doesn't mean that people on the left and some people in the middle or some never Trumpers aren't going to be pissed off. But I think the narrative is such that it's not as big of a deal as it would have been, say, 90 days ago.
Sean, one more, and then I want to go to Dan. Can he get away on the right exempting some of the more egregious offenders from the pardon?
My take on this is that they're going to make this a big blanket thing. And so I don't, the word get away with it. I think that you're going to throw a couple of the real bad guys in there, which is unfortunate, because I think for the folks that did assault a police officer or commit felonies like that, they're in a distinct group. And I think you could get away with a lot more, to use your phrase, if you said, okay, if you were just there, it's a misdemeanor, if it's public nuisance or something like that, you just blanket pardon those guys. But the people who committed acts of violence towards a law enforcement official are in a separate category. I just don't know that they've gone through that level of nuance.
Dan, will Donald Trump pay a political price if he mass pardons the January 6th offenders?
Yes, and I think he should. I think Sean makes the point, and I agree with them, that they're going to try to flood the zone that first 24, 48 hours with a flurry of activities and hope that the kind of tree falls and it's heard by just a few people. But there has been some polling on this. It shows that not just Democrats and not just independents, but some Republicans are pretty strongly against what may happen. And, I think Trump should pay a price. I mean, if you're going to talk about the rule of law and order, you can't say kind of this law and order is okay and this is not. People destroyed property, as you say. They harmed police officers. In some cases, those officers died, and they should be held accountable. And I think Trump will pay a price. And it's not just that he'll pay a price in the terms of like he pardoned them, but you are setting a tone on day one of the kind of retribution and getting even. And I think that is a little bit more dangerous in the long run for him.
I don't think it's just the Hunter Biden thing, by the way. President Biden's commutation of some very, very horrible people the other day didn't get the media attention it should have. But some of these people that were let out that had their sentences commuted are some of the most despicable human beings on earth. And yet, so again, I think between that, the BLM rioters, I think we've sort of created this thing where it's, you want to talk about our side, I'll talk about yours.
Yeah, and look, Black Lives Matters and others should be held accountable for what they did.
All right, so Trump's on Hugh Hewitt. I'll run through some of the things we know he said based on his early comments, but as far as I know, he's still going. He says he will undo.
Did Mark freeze or did I freeze?
Mark, I think you froze for a sec. So just say you go back to.
Okay, I'm back. President Trump says he will undo Joe Biden's new ban on offshore oil and gas development along U.S. coastlines. He says he's open to talk to Democrats about what to do about the Dreamers. He says he doesn't know that can be in reconciliation, but he's open to talking about it. And he says, and this is something I could explain, but I'm hoping most of you don't need a detailed explanation. On this question of one reconciliation bill or two, the process by which Republicans only need 50 Senate votes as opposed to 60 to pass something, overnight it seemed to become clear that the Republican Party was going to do one reconciliation bill, which means it will be a bigger package and take longer. But passing one difficult thing is easier than passing two difficult things. Donald Trump in this interview equivocates things a little bit. He says he prefers one bill, but he's open to John Thune's approach as long as it be passed quickly. Quote, I'm open to either way as long as we can get something passed as quickly as possible. Let's play 102, please.
Well, I favor one bill. I also want to get everything passed. And, there are some people that don't necessarily agree with it. So I'm open to that also. My preference is one big, beautiful bill. Now, to do that takes longer. To submit it takes longer, actually. But so it's a longer process. I would say that I'd live with that. I believe we'd get, I don't know, to me it just is it's cleaner, it's nicer. Now, with that being said, we'd get some border work done a little bit earlier, et cetera, but the border work, we have a lot of money that we're going to be clawing back from the Green New scam and all of the trillions of dollars, billions and trillions. You usually have to use the word trillions nowadays, unfortunately, but from the trillions of dollars that we're going to be clawing back, and we have money. We don't need it desperately, immediately. If 2 months is going to make a difference. So I can just say this: the border is going to be secure. We're going to start it immediately. Tom Homan is central casting. He's going to do a great job, and that whole group is going to be fantastic. And I did it before, and we're going to do it again. We had the best border we've ever had, and now we'll have the best border we've ever had. times two. I would prefer one, but I will do whatever needs to be done to get it passed. And, we have a lot of respect for Senator Thune, as you know. He may have a little bit of a different view of it. I heard other senators yesterday, including Lindsey, talking about it. They prefer it the other way. So I'm open to either way, as long as we get something passed as quickly as possible.
Dan, first question. What is the highest praise Donald Trump can bestow on a nominee?
Central casting. Look
Correct.
good, sound good.
Correct. Just making sure you're in sync there. So Dan, on this issue, I have come to believe that one bill is the smarter play. What do you think?
I go back and forth about this. I mean, the challenge with one bill, first off, it's going to be huge. For all the people who cheered Elon Musk for tweeting that the budget bill was whatever it was, 1,300 pages, and they got it down to like 200. Yeah, and that was great. You have not seen anything until potentially this reconciliation bill. If they do one, it is going to be thousands of pages. I think the other thing is when you do one bill and you say it must pass, everybody and their mother tries to shove in their priorities because the view is that you just kind of like we talked about with January 6th.
Sure, but
you can't.
I don't disagree with your 2 points, but just to pick up on that one and then throw it back to you before we go to Sean. If you do two bills that are must pass, then you have the same problem twice. I don't think that problem is mitigated by going to two bills, right?
Well, no, it's not. And I think the challenge is the Republican conference is not unified on either bill. So the theory is if you put them together, you're going to force the 20, 30 holdouts for either to compromise because their priorities in the quote other bill are included. So I think it probably is the best way to get the whole thing overboard, but it is going to carry a ton of risks trying to keep everybody on board and not have this thing get too big and collapse under its own weight.
Sean, I've been waiting to say this to you for 48 hours. One lump or two, sir?
I'm of a fan of one.
Yeah.
The issue in Trump world is this. It's not only just, as Dan points out, bigger. It's going to take a while. And what you're eager in your first 100 days to put some points on the board. And I think the longer it drags on, the more he is going to become very frustrated and say, "Where's my bill? Where's my bill? Where's my bill?" And the process itself to put this together and do it right. You've basically, by the way, you've just created like full lobby employment act because every lobbyist in town. And but I think that's the only issue I have now. The early indications are that Johnson's going to put this bill on the floor first week of April. That would get you two more votes because you'd have the 1st and the 6th district of Florida both having a new member of Congress by then, by the special elections in Florida. That buys him two more votes. So I actually think get one bill, get it done, and then sell it the rest of the year. So you're not, you only have to spend your political capital once.
Yeah.
Well, now, April would be tough.
It would be tough. I'll say a couple things. First of all, again, process. You need two votes on the reconciliation bill, right? You need a vote to basically tease it up and does the shell, and then you need to do the substantive vote. So they'll have to do this twice. First of all, you need a forcing mechanism, right? You're not going to pass this bill without a forcing mechanism because Congress will always delay. One forcing mechanism is the debt ceiling. That's not a great forcing mechanism for the House conference, right? The other forcing mechanism is the expiration of the tax cuts, which is the end of the year. So to me, the problem they have now is they got to choose one of those two. Maybe they'll try the first one, and if it doesn't work, they'll do the second one. But that opens the door to my second question on this, which is, for a lot of House Republicans, any bill that has Democratic support, they don't like, because that's part of the tribal sensibility they have. So for instance, Sean, I think they could do an immigration bill that could get Democratic votes. But will House Republicans vote for a bill that some Democrats in the House support? I'm asking you non-rhetorically. In other words, they have to spend some time doing some stuff that's going to require 60 votes between now and the passage of the reconciliation bill. So by definition, are they not going to be courting danger for Speaker Johnson and John Thune that says, you're accommodations. You're working with Democrats now, and you expect us to then go back to a pure Republican bill later in the year. How does that get worked out?
You've got two interesting dynamics at play, right? Because in theory, Johnson doesn't need to work with Democrats, right? He could, in the narrowest of ways, get through a vote. Thune, by definition, has to. And so you've got this dynamic set up where one house is saying to the other one, why are you working with them? And they don't understand it. I think that, that this is going to be a problem because Republicans want to show that they got something done, and the more that they're working with them, and the sort of the collegial nature of the Senate is just much more like, hey, buddy, let's cut a deal. The House Republicans don't want that. They don't want to hear about that.
Yeah.
I will say this. I think that one of the things that Republicans need to do, though, is, and you mentioned the Dreamers thing, they need to lead early. Like, if they think cutting deals is going to kill, from a MAGA standpoint and from a Republican standpoint, I think they need to get out there, define the terms of the engagement, and then say to Democrats, if you want to come along, you're welcome to, but here are the terms of this bill.
So I thought one of the smartest things I heard anybody on over the weekend say was John Thune said, hey, Democrats should vote for the reconciliation bill. Now, he knows they won't, but they're there's the big MAGA win now is not going to come sooner than the summer, and it's probably going to come in the fall. So can Republicans risk working with Democrats between now and then?
Well, that's why I think one of the things that has to happen is, we talked about this flurry, the first week of Trump. Now, this is where we're going to find out what happened, but what's been happening behind the scenes, right? So if I were them, I would not just try to blow it all on day one, which I think there's going to be a lot that comes out day one. But if they can manage a lot of these executive orders and actions over the first month and really show action that's not necessarily legislative, but administrative, I think that's going to be huge. I mean, on the border, on a lot of the cultural issues that President Trump campaigned on, I think if they can score points, that might assuage the base a lot that's not going to see any immediate action legislatively because of the nature of the makeup.
Well, and the problem remains, the Republican conference is not united. They are divided on a lot of these issues. And it's not that it's a 50-50 division. It's a 90-10, 85-15. But when your margins are what they are in the House, that's the problem. I mean, if Trump can crack enough heads and get them on board and keep them on board, then this should move relatively timely. And to your point, Mark, maybe it's really the summer, not the spring. But as long as you have the No Caucus out there pounding the table on deficit spending, the SALT tax, the tax on tips is going to cost a lot of money. They're not going to pay for it.
Yeah, but Dan, I think that to your point, I get it. But I also think, to me, that speaker vote was very telling. Trump getting on the phone with those guys and saying, knock it off. And they got in line, right? It was... I think that you're right on the SALT and stuff like that, but already they've told Lawler and the New York guys, hey, you're going to get some state and local tax SALT, in the reconciliation bill. They've started to signal to the various groups, you're going to get what you need. I don't think you're going to see the division so far. I mean, there's not an issue that I see right now where you've got this fracture.
Spending.
Well, I was going to say, what was the carrot that they dangled to get them on board for speaker? That in the reconciliation bill, there will be deficit reduction. They won't do a bunch of these spending plans. So at some point, that is going to meet, the rubber's going to meet the road. And to your point, Sean, maybe they will back down. Apparently, Chip Roy essentially groveled and said, don't tweet against me. Don't, So Trump knows he has the upper hand. But if they don't do that, you're going to have to work with Democrats.
Spending is the big issue, and I don't know how they're going to address it. All right, I want to do two more Trump things quickly, and then talk about Joe Biden, and then go to questions. Folks, I apologize for my audio freezing. I can't explain it, but I do apologize for it. Please raise your hand if you want to be part of the process. We'll get to you shortly. All right, quickly, just like one sentence each. Dan, what's going most poorly for Donald Trump right now?
Most poorly would probably be the reconciliation ping-ponging. They just, that interview feels like they still don't have a plan.
Sean.
I actually will riff off what Dan said and turn this into a positive. I think if that's the worst thing that you can say that's going on, that they don't have a finalized reconciliation plan, that's a damn good week, and I'll take that any day.
All right, so Sean, I agree with you. Do you see anything bad going on for Trump now?
No, I think this has been a great 30 days. You've got corporate leaders, foreign leaders. He's got great staff announcements going. I mean, everything is moving the right direction. I don't see one thing right now that you can say,
Okay.
wow.
Well, the only thing is all the things they just did should not have been this hard. So it is still true.
That's not Trump.
Well,
it's
but
Trump's
it bears
party.
on Trump.
Trump's
Yeah.
party is fractured, right? He had to get on the phone and whip for 48 hours to get a speaker elected of his own conference. It shouldn't be that hard. And so like there is warning signs out there that we just talked about.
The correct answer is the unsteady hands of John Thune and Speaker Johnson.
There you go.
Like if Trump had like two pros in those positions with a lot of experience, I think he'd be a lot better off. Those guys could prove to be great, but they're untested.
Yeah, but I will take that. I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I think to put that when the push came to shove, Trump got it over the top for Johnson, and so to me,
but that was
that's
a
Johnson
House
problem, not a Trump problem.
That was a House only issue. I'm telling you, until it's proven that Thune and Johnson can work together in a crafty way, it doesn't matter if you can pass a bill through the House unless Thune can pass it. All right, Sean, what cabinet nominee is most imperiled currently?
To be determined, because right now Thune just came out, told Hegseth that he's got the votes. I think everybody. I mean, I don't see anybody right now.
Well, do you know? CBS reported that. Do you know that to be true?
I do not.
Okay.
But I believe Jen Jacobs when she says it. So
Yeah.
And Thune hasn't pushed back on it. So
yeah. Okay. Dan, Sean says none are imperiled. What do you say?
I would be a little worried about Tulsi Gabbard. There is still Republicans saying they want to see some of these reports. And the fact that they're not on board the way they seem to be on Hegseth would make me worried.
All right, Joe Biden, and then we're going to go to your questions. Very rare to have leaking out of the Biden administration, particularly leaking that involves finger pointing. And yet on the story about the president's decision to quash Nippon Steel acquisition of U.S. Steel, there was a big Washington Post story with lots of accounts of national security officials named saying the political people did this and this was a bad idea. That comes amidst Joe Biden, a flurry of activities, starting with the pardons and the commutations, but a bunch of other stuff. And now NBC says he's going to give two big farewell speeches. Dan, how would you describe the goal or goals of all these moves by Joe Biden?
Well, to some level, it's a traditional, path, which is the last few months you give legacy setting speeches, you issue executive orders, which we talked about kind of, a month and a half ago. Like, why isn't he doing some of this stuff? Why is he always on vacation? He should be traveling, awarding presidential medals of freedom. Like, I know some of these angered people, but like, this is what presidents do in their last few months. I think where he's getting into trouble is he sounds kind of bitter and resentful and almost like the election didn't happen. Like he kind of can't come to terms with the country voted for the agenda that Donald Trump put forth and is about to go enact. And so I think in that regard, usually presidents put on the happy face and are optimistic in their kind of farewell speeches. Biden just doesn't sound like he's there.
Sean.
Yeah, I got to say, Dan mentioned this. We talked about this, like 45 days ago.
Yeah.
Try to get your legacy intact by doing all this crazy left-wing stuff. Now, just to be clear, I don't want that to happen. So from an American standpoint, a conservative standpoint, I'm glad he didn't. But the idea that suddenly now 14 days from leaving office, he's finally doing all this stuff that we said 2 months ago. Like, this is what you should have been doing at the end of November, December, flooding the zone, awarding every left-wing nut job with some kind of award, traveling to all your crazy places, banning offshore drilling like he's trying to do today. I mean, it's like they said, why don't you take 30 days off? We'll come up with a list and then you can just, do it at the end. We didn't talk about this, but he teed off on reporters last night. To Dan's point, I mean, he sounds like a bitter old man that, I will say this, we didn't get to this, but on Meet the Press yesterday, and you guys know what I think about that show, I was shocked that they asked Chuck Schumer about whether he regretted the comments that he made about Biden's ability, his mental acuity, et cetera. And then when Welker followed up and said, could he have led the country for the next 4 years? Schumer refused to answer the question. And I think that was telling because I think we're all seeing it, but this is amazing the way he's going out in a flurry, trying to, go oversee the Pope before he leaves and do all this stuff. Anyway, I agree. I think he sounds like a very, but I think it's less about losing the election and less about the fact that his legacy is in tatters.
Dan, I think on January 20th, I'll tell you if I think this was qualitatively different or not. It feels different to me, but you say it isn't compared to other presidents, and I want to see what else he does. But my sense from what he's done so far is we got 2 weeks to go, and he's going to do some stuff that's qualitatively different. That's my semi prediction.
Well, I mean, yeah, we'll see what comes, but I think in terms of executive orders, in terms of giving speeches and giving awards and even travel,
all normal.
Yeah, all normal. That's normal, but we'll have to see if he has a few surprises up his sleeve.
Pardoning your son, not normal. Committing the sentences of monsters, not normal. Okay.
Well, issuing pardons is normal, and even to some, but as has been the case the last 20 years, there are a few characters in there that make you cringe.
Mass commutations of monstrous murderers has never been done. It's just never been done. You can say it's not meaningfully different, but we'll see. Watch this space. All right, let's bring folks in. Thank you for joining. Raise your hand if you want to be part of the conversation. Karen McDowell, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell us where you are. Tell us where you are, where those frames are from. Yes, we all want to know that. And what's on your mind, please. Oh, we can't hear you. You are unmuted, but we can't hear you. If you can see if you can figure that out. I'm in no position to criticize those with audio issues. So,
Mark, I just want to know. I'm looking at Raleigh's screen there. Did you ever have a mustache, or is that a is his backdrop of you just AI?
I don't know where you're looking, Sean.
I don't either.
Raleigh, there he goes. He's ducking. You guys can't see that?
Put your hand up. Whoever Sean's talking to, put your hand up. We're stalling while Karen works on our audio.
Oh, I see it there. Yeah.
You got him. All right, now duck. There we go.
I still don't see it. Is a picture of me with a mustache?
Hold on.
Yeah, it is.
Sean,
maybe
can
it's
you pin him?
Mark.
You pin him.
I'm trying to screenshot it.
Karen, any luck?
Here.
Oh, okay. There, I see it now. Hold on. Yeah. So I did have that mustache. All right, Karen, I'm unmute you. Try now, Karen. I'm gonna unmute you. Or ask. There you go. Try now. No, still can't hear you. Keep working on it. We'll keep you open. I grew that mustache. I grew a beard years ago, and then I did something that, frankly, I just say in all honesty, did not get enough attention. Between segments on Morning Joe, I shaved a little by little. So first I shaved the beard, like this part. Then I had the goatee and the mustache. Then I shaved this part. Then I just had the mustache. I believe I made television history. I don't believe anyone ever appeared in one program with different sets of things. And the mustache, as you can see, makes me look like Ned Flanders. All right.
Breaking news, by the way, Trudeau is hosting, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau just announced a presser at, I think, 10:45 Eastern.
I think he's going.
He's not running for governor. He's not.
Raleigh, duck down again. Let everybody see my Ned Flanders look. Skiddly diddly, everybody. Yes. All right. Thank you for that. All right. We'll wait to see if Karen can get her mic working. In the meantime, let's bring in Derek. Derek, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell folks where you are, what's on your mind, please.
Afternoon. Can you hear me? I'm in North Carolina, and I'm a Trump supporter.
Yes, sir.
And a
Duke
alum. So good morning, gentlemen. I wanted to weigh in on the H1B visa issue that blew up over Christmas. A little bit about my background. I'm a West Point electrical engineering, Duke master's in data science graduate. That program was 75% non-US students. So I'll explain more about that later. But I'm a strong supporter of Trump, door knocking, poll observing, the whole line. But this issue could cause a lot of his base to sit it out. So what started this, for those who don't know, Surinam Krishnam is a venture capitalist who was picked to be the senior policy advisor for Trump by David Sachs to work on AI policy. He's donated to Democrats, and his comment to Doge was not making the VA more efficient for our warfighters or saving Social Security. It was processing foreign workers faster. which led to a lot of complaints about the H1B visa system. And when people are complaining about the H1B visa system, they're really complaining about legal immigration in general. They'll tell you it's only 85,000. That does not include non-capped industries, non-capped sectors. So it ends up being several 100,000 visa workers on the H1B. Plus there's the OPT program, which is 200 undergrad and 200 graduate students who also largely enter tech, and there's extensions for STEM, et cetera. The J1 program, I could go on. But the net is there is close to 1 million workers, foreign workers entering the US labor market every year at entry to mid-level positions. They'll try and kind of misdirect that, oh, these are the top 1% or 0.1%. That is a separate visa. That is the H1B program. So that has led to a lot of frustrations with Sachs and Elon, who staunchly defended this program. And frankly, in my opinion, they gaslighted a good bit, throwing out that 85,000 number, saying Suriname has nothing to do with immigration, but your technology determines your amount of labor force that is needed. And I wanted to highlight that this is a very important issue for the base. And it also, Elon didn't handle himself particularly well on Twitter either,
Derek,
and the censorship, et cetera.
Derek, super impressed by how informed you are. I want to ask you one question, and then I want to turn it over to Dan and Sean to either comment or ask you questions. When you say the base will, quote, sit it out, what does that mean? Donald Trump's not up for re-election, so what would the base be doing by sitting it out?
I think there is a tranche of people who, if you bring in a ton of foreign labor, if you're a recent college grad who voted for Trump and can't get a job in tech, you're going to be pissed, and you won't show up in the midterm. So I think, especially as narrow of a margin as there is in the House, I think that's a concern.
Okay, Sean.
So, Mark, while we were on hiatus, I saw this going on online. I put a poll up on Twitter. I've done this from time to time. I might get a couple thousand votes. There was just shy of 100,000 votes that participated in this. And again, it's not scientific, but it just gives you a sense of what Derek's talking about. Over the course of 48 hours, 1,000 votes, 67% said no to H1B visas, and only 30% said yes to what the position that Elon was talking about. I think Derek's hitting on something that is so, I was blown away, not just by the vote, the intensity and the comments. People are so tuned into this issue in a way, I mean, like the articulate nature in which Derek just described this is something that I've not seen on an issue of any magnitude. And I was blown away by how many people were talking about indentured servitude and the idea that the tech, it was just eye-opening for me as somebody who's been in politics for a long time to see how intense and how informed people were on this issue. And I agree. I think that this is sort of awakening a sleeping giant in a way that the MAGA folks didn't. There was another nominee, if you recall, the North Carolina sheriff, who the MAGA base rose up and said, no way, because of his COVID stance. I think this is another issue where Derek's right. I don't know what form it manifests itself in, but I think people are going to say, I'm sorry, I can't be with you anymore. If they don't have
to be honest,
I say with the presumption, hold on, Derek, one second. I say with the presumption of grace, it was a Florida sheriff, not North Carolina.
I'm sorry, you're right. The Hillsborough. Right.
Sorry, Derek.
All will be forgiven if they pick someone from the military centers of excellence, AI centers of excellence, instead of this guy. Like, people are distrustful of venture capital for a lot of reasons, particularly working class people. So if we're going to snag this full colonel who's a PhD operations research guy to be the president's advisor, that would be a much better pick. And I think it smooths things over, especially if you severely restrict the amount of foreign workers coming to the U.S.
Well, that's the problem, is that you can put anybody in that position, but the policy outcome that a lot of Trump's donors like Elon Musk and David Sachs and others want is more H1B visas. I happen to know this issue very well. I lobbied for tech companies for their biggest, at the time, the biggest trade association from 2010 to 2013. This was the number one issue that we lobbied on. And the young staffer with Jeff Sessions, who fought us tooth and nail in the Senate, was Stephen Miller. And so, to your point, I have heard these talking points for, I have heard the talking points against. that is going to be the challenge, is you're trying to hold together the business community that wants more of these, right? Whether it's Google and Meta, or all the consulting firms that bring in people on the lower end, which is who kind of eats up a lot of those big numbers. But Mark, you asked the question, okay, Trump's not on the ballot. Trump's power for the next year is that I could take you out in a primary. I could rally MAGA online and turn on you on a dime, and I can crush you, Chip Roy, anybody. If MAGA starts to turn the microphone off because they're pissed off about H-1B visas, that is a problem for Donald Trump, because he is not on the ballot again. And it's going to be about 18 months before people say, I'll still be here and you won't in 4 years.
Well, I think that goes back to down to what you're saying. If you're fighting the problem with the speaker vote was that there was no plan, right? And people were like, why are you fighting what Donald Trump wants when you don't have a plan? If you were to fight H-1B visa and say, with all due respect, we're fighting for I think that would be a real fight. That's legit. Totally. But I want to just ask you a question, Dan, because I sort of threw this out the other day, and as a guy that doesn't know as much as you do about this, one of the ideas that I threw out is, why doesn't the tech industry, as sort of a bone, say, hey, look, in the short term, we have a problem with skilled labor. In the long run, you guys are concerned about U.S. jobs not filling these spots. Why don't we set up some kind of apprenticeship fund type thing where we will throw a bone to you guys to say, got it. We need these guys in the short term, but in the long run, we're going to train more people and we will put our money where our mouth is. Is that something that would be palatable to the tech industry?
100%. And they do it. They do put money into training programs. I mean, look, this is not just a problem on the right. Bernie Sanders was one of our biggest opponents on the left. Like, the Democratic base has this issue. They're trying to get more people of color into STEM programs. They're trying to get more funding for high schools with strong STEM programs, state universities, the University of Illinois, others. So it is something. The problem is, as you said, Sean, in the short run, the tech companies say they cannot get enough talent domestically. If they lose them, then they're going to go be populated overseas in rival companies. And so, again, I don't see how Elon Musk spends $250 million and is living at Mar-a-Lago and says, sure, turn off the H-1B visas. I've got no problem.
No. But I think from a PR standpoint, they need to, the tech industry needs to get together and talk about some kind of massive initiative to put U.S. workers, to get them trained and equipped and ready to go for the next century. Because you can't just say, well, sorry, we can't do this. And maybe they are doing this, but if I don't know about it and Derek doesn't know about it, or I shouldn't speak for Derek, but I think that these guys need to do a heck of a lot more to get out in front and say, we're willing to put U.S. workers at the forefront of this, and here's what we're going to do.
Derek, one more closing comment from you.
Yeah, and this is why I mentioned that Duke University master's program was 75% foreign. And you're talking about a university that's maybe 10 to 20% admit rate. So we had 2 people from the same town in Pakistan, but nobody from rural Iowa, nobody from inner city Baltimore, and the list goes on. So I think a huge part of the problem is because they don't get financial aid, they don't get any of this stuff, is the universities have a huge incentive to bring in foreign students. And that full stop, shut that off. In my opinion, it should be like 5% all come from allied countries. And then you don't have the industrial espionage problems, all this other stuff, and them flooding the job market. Because they can always go back to their country of record once they're educated in the U.S.
Derek, who's the single greatest men's basketball player from Duke in the last 50 years?
JJ Redick.
More than Christian Laettner. Wow.
I was going to go with Laettner.
Or Zion Williamson, but he only played for a year. So
yeah. All right, Derek, thank you, man. Thank you for raising the topic and for joining. We appreciate it. Thank you. All right, let's try Karen again. Karen, I hope tech support has done its magic. You're unmute and try again. No, nothing. No. Sorry, Karen. Maybe try some other device. We'll give you one more chance in a little bit. All right, let's go to Andrew. Andrew, welcome in. Tell folks where you are. What's on your mind, please?
The Eagles.
You got to unmute, Andrew. Goodness. There we go. No, one more time, Andrew. No, you got to hit unmute.
I am.
Yeah,
There you
there
go.
you go.
You're good.
You're good. You're on.
Is it working? All right.
Yes,
I
sir.
hit it a
Go
few
ahead.
times and it just kept coming back.
All right. All
Good morning. Good to
Happy New Year. Welcome in.
Oh, we just lost you.
good to see you. Yes. Gone again already.
No, you're good, Andrew. Go ahead. Ask
I
your
good?
question
Okay.
before something bad happens.
Yes. The over the break before the situation in New Orleans and whatnot happened, there was an article in the Washington Post. I'm sure you guys saw it. Sort of buried midway down in it was a paragraph about Biden and some of his aides still believing he should have stayed in the race, despite the bad performance at the debate, despite the poll numbers, everything like that. They think he could have beat Trump. That's what his aides have said. He said to this reporter from the Post. Curious to get your guys' thoughts on that. One thing that the article said was that they were careful to not place any blame on Kamala Harris for that, which we've seen. They just can't seem to, bring themselves to admit that she had any flaws. What do you think about that? Would he have beaten Trump?
No, he would have lost in a landslide. And what's interesting about that story from a press point of view is the failure to even mention the president's loss of decline in mental acuity. I find it stunning that the Washington Post is going backwards in doing an actual account of what happened. The Biden people and the Harris people, and there's overlap there, right? They don't want to be in a blame game. They know the minute the blame game starts, no one's going to come out well. So far that truce is holding, but it's keeping Democrats from having an actual accounting of what went on. Joe Biden, sure, maybe there would have been some masterful comeback, but on the trajectory he was on, he would have lost significantly worse than Kamala Harris, and a lot of down ballot candidates would have lost. Those Senate races that they won in the Midwest, for instance, they wouldn't have won. So almost certainly. So Joe Biden and anyone who thinks that he was in a strong position are deluded, and there's a reason he stepped down. He didn't do that. He didn't do that happily or easily. Dan.
Yeah, I tweeted at the time about this that I thought it was embarrassing to not talk about his decline of mental acuity. And I think the problem for Biden is he can't get over the fact that the party has lost the working class. This is a guy who sees himself as working class Joe from Scranton. And on his kind of political tombstone at the end of his career is this kind of capstone of the Democratic Party is losing or has lost the working class vote. And so I think he just thinks in his gut, I would have done better. I would have carried Scranton. I would have, done better in the T of Pennsylvania and in, rural Georgia, the way, he thinks he did in 2020. So I think to Mark's point, the fact that there was no mention of his decline of mental acuity, the idea that Biden would have hit the campaign trail in the summer to get back, in command, he just couldn't do it. I mean, that's why he didn't do it all spring and didn't do it in 2023. And so it's a tough read. It makes me shake my head. And I hope the party has a reckoning pretty soon.
Concur. I will say that to pile on, it's not just Biden. I think I saw that op-ed from James Carville that said, basically it was the economy stupid. And I'm like, the candidate stupid. If these guys want to continue to pretend that this was not the candidate in both cases, God bless them. Good for them. But I think until they realized that they had a poor candidate to begin with and they handed the baton to another poor candidate, if they want to keep believing that they could have won somehow, good for them.
Yeah. I don't know why it's so hard to say she's a nice person. She has a lot of strengths. She accomplished an historic things as vice president, but she wasn't a good candidate, and here's why. I still haven't.
That's what blows my mind. It's not a tough thing. You can do this respectfully.
Yeah.
And to say, hey, good person, da 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 da. But I've blown away. Washington is so good at blaming other people that I cannot believe this is the one instance in which she is not getting the blame for clearly a bad job.
So can I ask you guys a follow-up? Can I ask you a quick follow-up?
Hold on one second. Hold on one second. Somebody on here, I'm crowdsourcing it. Go look at her schedules from the day she took over as the nominee and count the number of days she had no public events. Just somebody do that. Bring us the math tomorrow. Go ahead, Andrew.
So I was going to follow up. Sounds like no one here thinks Biden could have beaten Trump. Obviously, Harris couldn't beat Trump. Was there a Democrat who could have beat Trump in this last election?
Not that late in the process. I don't believe there is.
At any point.
It's so hard to say because you just don't know how someone performs under those bright lights until the Trump machine guns, come down on you, and there are just every day you're having to respond. The other question is, how would have other Democrats separated themselves from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris? I mean, that is the thing that Harris.
But it would have been easier. It would have been easier for anybody but Harris.
Of course, but you still have to do it. You still would have had to have picked some fights with the party, and you can write a paper about it, but executing
the one person I had thought could do it, Josh Shapiro. His failure to counteract the 6 negative stories dropped on his head when he was under consideration as vice president makes me think he would not have sustained, as Dan said. Donald Trump pounding you on the head for 100 days is not a lot of people who can withstand that. And the fact that he couldn't withstand the Philadelphia Inquirer taking opposition research and putting it in the paper, I thought was a very cautionary thing, and I don't see anybody else who could have. Sean.
Yeah, I'll just quote the great philosopher Mike Tyson. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Exactly. I think that's right. You just don't know, but I have a hard time believing any of these guys could have
or gals.
Yeah.
Oh, I disagree. I do think the race was winnable and Trump was beatable, but that's another show.
I agree with that. All right, Hugh Hewitt. There's some things that are like with Hugh Hewitt that are so consistent. So what Hugh Hewitt has tweeted about his interview with Donald Trump is, yes, the legacy media is focused on the fact that Trump said he'd be willing to deal with the Dreamers. But the most important thing to Hugh Hewitt was that Donald Hewitt's obsession with the need to build more ships to counteract the Chinese. This is a Hugh Hewitt obsession. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because I think on the merits he's right. But Donald Trump apparently said, yes, we need to build more ships. So for Hugh Hewitt, that's everything. All right, Karen.
Well, also,
third
but
time's the charm.
Can I just say this? I'm so glad he said it, because the bottom line is we have taken our eye off the ball with respect to China. What's going on in the 7th Fleet area of responsibility is we are so unprepared as a military and as a country for the threats that we face. And I'm glad to see the president talking about rebuilding the infrastructure of what the Navy
100%. It takes a long time to build ships, so you got to get started.
I was going to say, 4 years under his first term, the eye came off that ball big time.
Yes. Karen got some tech support since her try number 2. And now you got to unmute, Karen. You got to hit unmute. You see it? No, it's not letting you unmute. All right, Karen, you're going to come back tomorrow, or come back tonight, maybe. All right.
Tomorrow. I want to know. I mean,
exactly.
Anticipation.
Right, come back tomorrow. Robert, welcome in. Tell everybody where you are, what's on your mind, please, after you unmute. There you go.
How's that?
That's perfect, Robert. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's snowing here in Pennsylvania too. So, it's not just in Washington, D.C., just not as bad as yeah, did it over there. That's good. So,
people in Washington only care about themselves. We all know that.
Yeah, I know. That's the rumor. I mean, I think we had an election about that. So,
unlike here in New York City, where we're just focused on the plan.
Well, it's as we say, it's New York, Washington. They do a little Philly in between and sometimes go to Boston. But, apart from New York and Philadelphia, there's not much to the country anymore, right? It's like that old New Yorker cartoon. Everybody remembers that, right?
Yes, sir.
It's like that. And then the rest of the country, who knows? So anyway, so the Pennsylvania perspective on this is, I know everybody's talking about tech and so on and so forth, and I come from the Lehigh Valley, so I miss like Bell Labs and Bethlehem Steel and all of that type of baseline industry. And the Nippon Steel decision was interesting. I mean, we have Charlie Dent, who us MAGA people love to hate, because I actually helped him get elected. So, but he was on the wire saying, well, we need the Nippon Steel deal; it's a better deal, and so on and so forth. When is basic industry reshoring going to come up as a topic for discussion there in Washington?
Sean.
I agree with you, and that's why I made the comment about the Navy. I mean, we have sort of taken our eye off the ball with respect to manufacturing, shipbuilding, munitions, all the stuff that made us a great, strong country, and now we're paying the consequences for it. So I hope. The thing that worries me most, Robert, is we had this whole discussion during COVID about PPE and the fact that we literally get this virus brought over to us, and then we go to other countries, particularly China, to buy our PPE. And what's the lesson? Nothing. Nothing. And it's disgusting to see what's going on. In fact, if anything, we've emboldened them more. We are more dependent on them. So I don't know. And I wish we saw a little bit more focus on this kind of stuff, but I don't know how many times we have been taught a lesson and take nothing away from it.
The one, it's interesting that you say that because that's also in pharmaceuticals and other types of stuff, and we really need to focus on basic industry. Let me say there is one small division of Bethlehem Steel, or not actually Bethlehem Steel, but it was spun out from that still's in operation in the Lehigh Valley. They do all of the specialty alloys, talking about ships. They do all the specialty alloys for submarines and other types of things. So, there's kernels of that left, but my soul, I mean, I know we're focused on, H1B visas and, internet, this and that, but as an old Pennsylvania guy, I don't know.
Well, as
Sam.
somebody who I went to Lafayette College in Easton down the road from Bethlehem,
great.
so I spent 4 years in that region. Look, I will give Donald Trump credit. His focus on energy exploration and the tariffs did help to bring industry back in 2017. And for Democrats to deny that is foolish. It did have an impact. It became cheaper.
Well, they didn't. I mean, if you saw some of Bob Casey's late
ads and
such, they did not ignore that.
And I think there is a kind of, things are coming full circle where the Democratic Party is now trying to think about how can we, get back on offense on this issue? How can we be, what are the policies? I think Trump will focus on it more over the next 4 years. I think one of the reasons Democrats have lost the industrial Midwest is we have lost touch with people and advocating for policies that help people with manufacturing, and we're more services and urban focused. So I think, there are people who very much are attuned to this issue. Hopefully we'll see good policy.
Hey, Robert, can I ask you this? If you got a call from President Trump today and he said, hey, Biden blocked Nippon Steel, what do you think I should do? What would you tell him?
In terms of blocking Nippon Steel, find a domestic.
I mean, like, what should he maintain? I mean, is there what does he need to do at this point now? Does he just maintain the policy? Does he need to what does he do going forward?
The devil's always in the details with these things. And I mean, again, for as much as we love to hate, let's say, the Charlie Dents of the world and such, there is some finer level analysis that should go on. If Nippon Steel wants to buy, you got to say, look, there's no layoffs for the next 10 years. You need to make community investment of this, that, or the other thing, where there's strong penalties. You need to do certain things, or have a domestic acquirer. There's Cleveland Cliffs out there, or they're not paying as much as Nippon Steel is, or whatever. But, you got to really work the problem. Everybody's living in these 15-second sound bites, which is just destroying the country. You need real policy. Again, in Pennsylvania is super purple. I mean, you've got like John Fetterman, who, I love the guy. He's not of our party or whatever, but I love the guy. Doesn't wear a suit, plainly talks, seems to represent the average common man here in Pennsylvania. And Josh Shapiro, who, is a fairly competent governor in that regard, sitting there and saying, okay, we brought 2 energy hubs in under the Joe Biden administration. We're trying here to do things to help the state. And in terms of doing something, it needs to be more than just a little 15-second soundbite. So it's either Donald Trump sitting there saying, well, we extracted a lot of value from Nippon Steel for the people of Pennsylvania. We did this, that, or the other thing. Or, like I said, find a domestic acquirer.
Robert, thank you. Happy New Year. Thank you for joining. All right. I want to make sure we end on time. So Brian, hello, Brian. We'll have you back soon. Thank you for joining. We'll have Brian on for update on the farm soon. This afternoon, two-way tonight, special time, 4 p.m. Eastern time. Not 6 p.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. Eastern time. So join us tonight. I know that's not technically night here, but it is night in Paris, London.
You're an early riser. It's night-ish.
Yeah. It's
night. I think you qualify for the seniors buffet at that time.
See you at 4 o'clock tonight. And then this program will be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern time, as always. And we're back. What you can expect from Two-Way the rest of the year. More programs are coming. Different things related to these 2 programs. More live events. And opportunities to participate in Two-Way in new ways. So all this will be rolled out over the coming weeks, months. We look forward to your being with us. Please continue to spread the word about Two-Way to other people. The audience continues to grow. you're going to love the new programs. Maybe not every one of you will love every new program, but all of you will love some of the new programs. And we look forward to introducing both the new programs and the new colleagues of ours who will be hosting those programs to you in the coming days, weeks, and months. Thank you very much. Gentlemen, tomorrow we'll see you at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. And I'm predicting right now there's going to be a lot to talk about. I can't say more, but I'm predicting that. Have a good day, everybody. See you at 4 p.m. this afternoon, 9 a.m. tomorrow. Have a good day.